Great. So my name is Tracy van der Schyff, and I'm all the way from sunny, and it's quite hot at the moment, Pretoria, which is close to Johannesburg in South Africa. It's 9 p.m. now, and it still feels like it's about 30 degrees Celsius. So I'm getting super hot. I could go for a swim. But what an incredible honor to be here with everyone tonight, and how amazing has the world and technology changed. We tend to just look at the negative things, but what an incredible opportunity to just pop in. And here I am at the Norwegian Microsoft 365 community meetup. So I'm very, very happy to be here. Thank you so much for asking me to join. This meeting is recorded, so I think we'll leave it for questions afterwards, which means that because it's recorded, you can also slow me down afterwards. So I think that's going to help because I talk very fast, so I do apologize right up front. But that's me to get started. And tonight's topic is something very close to my heart, and that is adoption and change management and the resources out there available to help our employees and to help our team of people working at this. I always put the session overview in there as well so that we just know kind of what it's going to be about, but my focus will be just mostly on the Microsoft tools that are available to help you with the adoption struggles in your company, I suppose. Then I always have a disclaimer is that I don't know everything, but I know everyone who does. So you are welcome to ask questions, but I can't say I always have the answers to them, but collectively we do, which is nice. So I always tell my students as well, or even my clients, that it's okay if you don't know everything, and you really don't need to know everything. But what we have to do in life is just surround yourself with the people who don't suck at the things that you suck at. Okay, that's what you have to do, is just find those people that are really good at the stuff that you're not great at, and then you'll be a great team. So that's just a little bit about me. And that brings me to my session. So I'm just going to go off camera as well. So then we can just focus on the slide deck, and I'll go on camera. Just remind me at the end, if we go to questions, I'll go back on camera again as well. So as mentioned, my focus tonight is the Microsoft adoption resources, but also a bunch of other crazy stuff that I'd love to share with you from my personal experience or the crazy things that I do. If you so we've got a couple of people on the call, and can you, if you've ever been in a session of mine, or if you've kind of like, I don't know, used my videos or something, would you just do a raise of hands? I just want to see who in the call actually knows me already and who doesn't. So I've got to apologize to the ones who don't know me. So give me a raise of hands if you're actually aware or have dealt with me or have come across me or something. So there's quite a large section of the group that doesn't really know me, that is new to my work and stuff. So I always joke and say that I'll just apologize up front, because I'm definitely a little bit crazy. You can let your hands go again. I'm definitely very crazy in the things that I do. I'm not, it's not normal what I do, okay? But it's okay with me. I don't think I'm supposed to do normal stuff. So the things we are going to cover is, I want to talk about ADKAR, oh my word, and some reporting tools. We're going to look at the productivity score. I want to talk about the learning pathways, some of the other adoption resources, and then I'm going to share loads of resources with you as well. Just to also confirm is that they are making a recording, so the team will share it with you through some platform, can share the recording with you, but I'll also share my slides that can be used as well, because we're all here to help each other, right? So that brings me to my first difficult topic, okay, and that's change management. So I'm saying difficult because it's something that I struggled with quite a lot years ago. Now I think I still struggle with it, actually. They can get so fancy pants about change management. You know, it's all these methodologies and things, and I normally don't subscribe to things like that. You know, when it gets too fancy for me, I normally don't end up using tools. I don't know why. So yeah, change management is a tricky thing. And if I'm going to ask for another raise of hands, I want to see who is a change management specialist, or who on it, or who's ever been educated in change management. Is there anyone on the call who has higher education in change management? So there we go. I've had a couple of hands go up and down. Now for me, it was difficult. So I think what was tricky for me with change management is that I never had higher education. I finished school and I started working when I was 14. So I think in a way I felt that I wasn't good enough. I didn't speak the language. So I would be in meetings and people would have like more like higher learnings for change management and I didn't. Okay, so it was quite a challenge for me. I thought I wasn't good enough to be able to get involved in change management, which is silly, by the way. But anyway, just want to put it out there. So if you look at change management, there's specifically now change management. There's so many methodologies out there, and this is definitely not all of them, okay? But there's so many methodologies out there for change management that it can be unbelievably scary, like so scary. It's an area that I was afraid of, similar to compliance and security or DLPs or document and records management or something. I mean, some of these things get like very, very complicated. And I was quite afraid of the concept of change management for many years because I felt it was a very complex methodology or an approach, because I just didn't quite understand, what tools to use and when, how to achieve things. And a lot of the big projects I was on kind of like stuck to this change management thing, that this needed to be in place and you needed to fill all these forms in and you had to do all these checklists and things. And I just, apart from the fact that I'm super lazy, that was a challenge for me. I just didn't get my head around it. So I think the first thing that I want to say to those of you that might not be experts or very well read in change management, because I'm not saying the rest of you are experts, but if that's not the area that you focus on every day, I think the most important thing that I can tell you tonight, so if you wanted to make one screenshot of anything in the slides tonight, then it's the next slide. So this is the one big thing I wanted to say to you, and that the only difference between big words and small words are the font sizes, okay? And I always say this to kind of repeat it to myself, because that was something that I was super afraid of, is that I didn't always understand the methodologies used. I didn't always understand the approaches or the phrases. So that's very important for me, is that you remember that the only difference between big words and small words are just the font sizes. It really doesn't matter. So that then brings me to how I took ADKAR was one of the approaches. So if I go back to the previous change, let me just see if it is here somewhere. If we think of ProSci, ProSci has a methodology called ADKAR, okay? You can see it there. And what ADKAR does is that it breaks it down into 5 steps, okay? So it says that you need the awareness of the need to change, you need the desire to support and take part of the change, you need the knowledge of how to change, and you need the ability to implement the change and then reinforce to sustain the change. And I think because I'm so lazy, I kind of like stuck to this methodology because it was easy enough for me to remember. But I then started using ADKAR and I started changing it to be specifically focused for Microsoft 365. So that was something I started doing, and I've written loads of articles on this, and I'll share loads of resources with you as well. But something that I also did by making this my own is that I realized, and that was purely because I did compliance in companies. So I was compliance in the last big company that I worked for. I was a compliance officer for ISO. So that's for Schyff, environmental and quality standards. And we use this specific approach, which is nearly the Kaizen approach, okay? You can go and read up about Kaizen as well. I don't know if you know about Kaizen, but it's all about continuous improvements and things like that. But the approach that we used was pretty much to say that you need to say you got a plan, then you do it, then you checked what you did, and then you act, and you adapt, and you review, and then you plan again. And for me, ADKAR kind of became just a simple cycle like this. And that's how I think pretty much everything is that we're supposed to do in life, is that if we follow this approach, then things kind of work. So I think this was just me trying to explain to you that I had to find something simple that worked for me, because some of those other methodologies just was way above my head. And there was a lot of things that you had to do in there that I didn't agree with, or I didn't see the purpose of it. So I think it's about finding something that works for you and then to run with it. So make it your own, translate it back to a language that you understand or that's normal to you, and then run with it. I mean, work with it. It depends on what your role is. I mean, some jobs requires a much higher level of change management, so then the simplistic approach of mine might be difficult. But I think what I'm trying to say is don't be so hard on yourself. Just don't. There's a lot of resources out there, and I'll share some resources as well. So I do think that that can help you loads. Now, the next topic that I do want to discuss, of course, I'm going to go into adoption itself now. And I'm probably going to step on some toes, but that's typically what I normally do in places, is that I do step on toes. So I don't know if anyone knows what this is all about, but it's, of course, The Matrix, which is one of my favorite movies. And I use this to talk about the difference between consumption and adoption. So is there anyone on this call who thinks that adoption and consumption is the same thing? Is there anyone? You can just raise your hand if you want to. Is there anyone that thinks adoption and consumption is the same thing? I'll just give a half a second. No one. That's a good call, because I would have had to have a half an hour discussion with you right now. So a couple of years ago, it was probably about a year or 2 years ago, I started having a big mouth about consumption not being adoption in the industry. And I even had a lot of Microsoft people look at me strange, and some of my peers in the industry and the community. And I said that there's a huge difference between consumption and adoption. And I think a challenge that we have is that companies are, they're pushing for consumption. They're measuring consumption. So what does that really mean? It means nothing. I mean, to get consumption for me isn't a plus point when it comes to adoption. And if I look at the consumption versus adoption, for me, consumption is when a license is assigned. Consumption is when the app is installed. Consumption is whether that person belongs to Microsoft Teams and he actually uses it. Consumption is whether his documents is being migrated from the file share to OneDrive. For me, that's consumption. Adoption is whether people are using the app and they're using it well. Are they efficient at using it, and do they actually like using it? Is it making them more productive, or is it making them slower? Because consumption, a lot of times, if that's all that you track, it could also slow people down, because I don't think we're focusing on the right things. So again, I have great resources that I'm going to share with you, some reading matter about consumption and adoption. But for me, there is a big difference, and I think you have to be very careful with how and what you measure with these things. I drew this picture. Well, not drew. Of course, I used Microsoft cut out images in PowerPoint, but this is just a simple way of looking at it. So this is a kid saying he waited for 3 hours for his mom to pick him up at school, and he eventually walked home because his mom never picked him up. And then his mom says that she doesn't understand what the problem is, because she put a note on the fridge last night telling him that she wasn't going to pick him up, okay, and with instructions on how to phone a taxi or something. And I think that that's a perfect example of how we roll out technology in companies. It's just crazy. We kind of our users an email and we say, hey, you're on OneDrive now. Have a nice day. Here's a link to a YouTube video if you don't know how it works. Okay. And that's not how it works. There's a lot of effort that needs to be put into helping users adjust to new systems. So yeah, just me stabbing some fun at the way that companies are helping users adopt systems according to what they say. Now, something when it comes to the adoption that's very important in the companies for me, I've never agreed with traditional change management methods. So in some of the big companies that I worked, they would have these special days where you get a voucher for a coffee and a muffin, and then there's some poor person walking around in a bee suit with balloons and handing out chocolates or something. And I'm like, that's not how you get adoption, people. That's just how you get people excited for 20 minutes, but that's pretty much it. That doesn't last, okay? So to get people excited about something means you have to give them something that makes their lives easier and better, okay? And that takes a lot of communication and training to get to that point. So the first thing that I do want to remind you of, because I got to check my time, I'm talking so much, is don't forget how important Office Pro Plus is, or these days it's been renamed now to Microsoft 365 Apps for Enterprise or something. I'm still getting used to it. But don't forget how important Office Pro Plus, I'm still calling it that, is. And what a big difference it makes to end users when you think and you talk of Microsoft 365, because they don't even know all these cool things that's been rolled out. There's just a couple of the things that I sometimes expose people to if they're completely new to it, to show them how incredible the new features are, how cool it is that cloud gets updated, regularly, etc. So please don't throw away how important the office is that they work on every day, okay? Because that's their business critical apps, by the way. We think it's Teams. Believe me, it's Office. So when I then come to Teams as well, I think something that I think is important to do is that I a lot of times use infographics and things and posters to explain how things, now this might be a bit complex, but I do use these posters to just try and explain better to users, because I do think it's important that they know how the technologies fit together, okay? And the same, for example, goes for SharePoint. So I use a lot of infographics. I like these one pages or quick references or posters. And I mean, I do the same even for the Power Platform. And those are just things that you can start putting up that helps people to visually start understanding what the purpose of certain apps are and what they're supposed to do. And I think when it comes to adoption as well, I think it's very important that you don't forget this Kubler-Ross change curve is quite interesting with how we adopt technology, because we definitely hit a low point, and be very careful that people don't get stuck in that low point. And also be very careful that the people that you've identified as your team that helps you to roll this out doesn't get stuck in that low point, okay? Because I've seen a lot of consultants out there on social media that gets negative about things, you know, like, oh, we don't like the new SharePoint Modern Online, or how that's so stupid, why does this work like that? Be very, very careful of not becoming a person that advocates the negativity and the negative side of it, because there is a negative side to everyone and to everything and to every product that we're rolling out. So be careful that you don't get stuck in that frustrated, depressive mood. If you work hard at it, and if you learn, and if you improve your skills is what brings you out of this loop. Experimenting and then making decisions on how you're going to use it, and then using it in your everyday life. So it's definitely training that helps you get out of that loop. So be very careful that you don't get stuck in that. So I'm going to start looking at the usage now. I'm not going to go into demo mode. I thought I would just have screenshots in here. It's easier as well to share the slides afterwards. But if I look at the usage in the admin center, obviously under reports. So if you go to the admin center to reports, you'll see that there is a usage area. And the usage, it depends on how much content you've got, okay? I've only got 3 user licenses in here. One of them is my sister's email address. Another one is Brahm, who's just a sheep. He does nothing. So pretty much this is my usage report, okay? And it's going to be very, very skewed because I work on clients and platforms the whole time. But the usage report can be enlightening as well. If you look at this, it'll show you your active users, how many files are stored. Now that's quite concerning, seeing as it's just me. Gee whiz. How much content is stored in OneDrive, etc. So that's also quite a nice thing to look at usage, which is consumption. And then, of course, under usage, you'll also see that it's got the Microsoft 365 usage analytics. Now, that takes you to Power BI, and you have to kind of nearly set that up. Okay, so we're going to take a look at the analytics now. So the first one that I showed you was the usage reports in the admin center. The next one that could be interesting is the analytics. Now, this report that you're looking at there is the older Power BI report we had for, it was called the Office 365 Adoption Preview. You can see the name there at the top. So that was launched, I don't know how many years ago, okay? And it has all these little dashboards that looks at certain things. And they're actually busy with new dashboards at the moment, because this has actually stayed in preview for many years. I'm not quite sure how that happened. But there's a lot of dashboards there as well that you can use. And please remember that they need to have admin rights. Okay, I can never remember. So they need to have global admin rights if they look at these reports, because it's across products. Okay, so just make sure that the people that needs access to it, at least if they can't have global admin, give them access to the reports by giving them like screenshots or something on a regular basis. But this new report of Microsoft, the Microsoft 365 Usage Analytics, you'll see that as soon as you've opened it up, you actually have to connect it to your tenant to show your own current data. This is just a collective summary that it's giving me an overview across industries, but you can actually connect it to your own tenant and it'll then show different dashboards, which is pretty cool. So that's also some nice, what I call consumption reports that shows your active user, you know, how many people are using different things, etc. So that's also a good report. It's also in the admin center, so it takes you to Power BI, and you have to connect it to your tenant. So make sure if you go here, there'll be a little message at the top that says, would you like to connect this to your own environment? Okay. Then the productivity score is a big one for me. I do think it needs still quite a lot of work. And it's, I think they've just moved to GA like very recently in the last week or two. But the productivity score is pretty cool. So last year, December and January and Feb, I was speaking at all the Microsoft Ignites. I was delivering the productivity score session for Microsoft. And I absolutely fell in love with how this report works. Now, again, don't laugh at my reports because that's mine and I'm pretty much only one user. But what this productivity score does is it doesn't just focus on consumption. It actually looks at adoption, which I kind of like. And it gives you resources on how to make it better or why it's important, which is what I think is good. It doesn't just tell you so many users on OneDrive. It says so many people are attaching emails, documents on emails. So if you look at the productivity score, you'll see that there's a couple of areas that it focuses on. So the first is communication. Then there's content and collaboration, and there's mobility. And then also what they focus on, endpoint analytics, network connectivity, and your Microsoft 365 apps health. Okay. Now, if I go into the communication level, I just want to see. So there's a section there that gives you an overview. So how many % of the people in your org is using more than one mode to communicate? Please remember that I am the 1% in the company, because the sheep does nothing and my sister just uses for me emails. So so there it also says number of people on email chat, etc. You know, how many people uses @mentions in the email. I'm surprised that it's 50% because I pretty much never use it because it's just me and my company. But if I work in other clients' companies, then obviously I use @mentions much more. So this one looks at your communication habits and it's got a benchmark that it works out. And that benchmark that it puts against you is based on the industry that you're in and the size of your organization. And you'll see, I think if I go back to the previous page, let's quickly just see. There we go. If I look at the main page, it also tells you how they calculate the peer benchmarks and how they calculate your own score. So you can definitely go and read up about that. Now, this is the communication area that it then breaks down. So how many people use @mentions, how many people use Teams channels to communicate, how many people post questions on Yammer. Now, of course, that would be crazy for me because to post questions for myself wouldn't make sense. So that's communication. The next area that it focuses on is content collaboration. Now here you'll see it tells me how many people are collaborating on online office files. Explore how the org collaborates, how many people uses OneDrive, how many people uses SharePoint, that's just me, obviously. How many people share files as email attachments? Sadly, I still share quite a lot of files as email attachments, and that's because most of my work's external. And yes, I have clients who get annoying, who doesn't want to open links to documents. So not that any of my clients are annoying, but some people don't want to open links to documents. So, and it's not even clients, actually. It's actually stuff outside of my clients. It's other things that people don't open OneDrive links, though, I suppose. Let me say I had to share a receipt to a payment that I made for the bank, then they normally don't like opening links. So this one looks at content collaboration. And then the next area looks at mobility. So that, again, looks at your mobile apps. How many people uses Outlook on more than one platform, how many uses Teams on more than one platform, etc. Now, all of these every time gives you a kind of a little link or a resource that you can read up more as well. So why is this important, or how do I get started with Teams, etc., which I think is pretty incredible about the productivity score. So this is a very, very nifty one for me. It's also under reports in the admin center. You'll see reports there. So that's also something that you can take a look at to say, how does that work? How can I set it up? So I do think that it's a good tool to start using. I do hope that there'll be more improvements to it. So I really hope that Microsoft will add some improvements, but please use user voice to then let Microsoft know if you have some great ideas of things that they can use when it comes to the productivity score. The next one that I'm going to go into, and as mentioned, I'm going to absolutely leave some time open at the end for all of us to just have a great chat. If there's any questions, or maybe you've got some success stories that you can share. Now, the Microsoft 365 Adoption Hub is definitely one of my favorite things. I really, really like the resources that they have there. And the nice thing that Microsoft also has done is that they have, over the last, I'd say, year or 2 years, they've definitely kind of collaborated. Thank you. They've definitely collaborated their resources as well to make it more simplified. So if I look at their resources, they kind of look at envision, onboard, and drive value. So there's a great resource as well, which is to look at the certified adoption specialist or something. I can't even remember. I did get that, I think, last year or maybe the year before. I can't remember. But that's also a great course to look at. I'm just reading comments. Hold on a moment. Oh, that's funny. So if you then look at the different areas that they focus on, they definitely started to simplify the content. That's great. That is a great blog, by the way. I want to quickly open that up. I want to see. That was brilliant. So that's a great resource that someone's just shared. And that was, I want to see if I can see the image of it, because I normally have it in my slides. Where is that social impact? I do have it in my slides somewhere, so I just want to find that graph quickly. But they did a graph. That's some great resources, by the way. They did a graph, I'll share it with you now, where they said that with Microsoft Teams and with it being adopted right, so communication and collaboration can save you up to 4 hours a week. And that's 10% of your productivity in a month. 10%. We can get more out of the salaries and stuff that we pay. I definitely have a resource on that as well that I can share. But there's some great things. Thank you very much for that resource as well. I really appreciate that. So if I look at this, and I've also got, I think, lots of these I've got in the resource links as well. So the adoption framework is broken up in the envision, onboard, and drive value. And then also another great resource for me is tech community. Okay, I mean, I absolutely love the tech community. So if you're becoming part of it, there's some great resources. There's the adoption blogs as well that comes out. So the tech community. And keep on sharing those links. If you know of the links, just share them in the messages. Then I don't have to share them afterwards. And then the Office 365 Champions program is also a great resource to have a look at, to help you kind of like belong to a community and to learn more. And then, of course, the Microsoft 365 learning pathways. Now, man, am I quite a fan. So let me just quickly get this up. Just give me a raise of hands. Who's installed the learning pathways in their companies? And just keep it up for me for a moment. See. Okay, a couple of you have. So there's the learning pathways. I'm going to quickly talk through this. I've just shared a link to it. And I'll talk about it a bit further now as well. So the learning pathways for me is an incredible thing. And you'll actually find it by going to the SharePoint lookbook. So let's quickly have a chat about that. The SharePoint lookbook is absolutely one of my favorite things as well. The fact that it's not tattooed on my arm is quite amazing. But the SharePoint lookbook has got a lot of examples of things on how to inspire people. So if you want to get adoption on SharePoint, that's a great place to get started. Thank you for that, for the adoption champion, become a champion link. So if I go and I look at the SharePoint lookbook, you'll see that one of the categories there is solutions, and one of those is the Microsoft 365 learning pathways. Now, the nice thing is you can actually add it to your tenant. So as a global admin, and I think you can be a SharePoint admin, I'm not sure. But as an admin, you can actually have this. I'm sure it says this here. Let me just see. Anyway, you can actually add this to your tenant. And what that looks like is pretty much like this. So let me find my tenant. So this is my Microsoft 365 learning pathways. It's been deployed in my tenant. And the training content in there, Microsoft actually keeps up to date. But it's inside my tenant. It's inside the good stuff. So if I go to Microsoft 365 training, you'll see that there's a lot of training resources in there. But Microsoft actually keeps it up to date, which I think is pretty incredible. And then what I've done as well, and I've definitely written some blogs on that as well, thank you for the lookbook link, is that I build pages. So I bring my governance into this as well, as part of my change management, my adoption program. So for example, if I go to Teams, you'll see that I've got a page for Teams that explains how do we use it, what is the product for, how does the company use it, where do I request a team if you have a provisioning process, where's some more resources, I've got stream videos as well, if the company has some local stream. I've got like a checklist for team owners of things they've got to remember. How does support and feedback work? What are the business and IT governance guidelines? So I even bring the business and the technical governance in here. And then I even, at the bottom, add the config and administration. So I bought these pages for the products that then helps everyone to learn more about the specific product. And I actually bring that all into my Microsoft 365 learning pathways. Now, there's even better ways of doing these things, which I'll show in a moment as well. Now, you can see there's a playlist, there's getting started with teams. It's just incredible. So go check out the Microsoft 365 learning pathways. I'm going to check this link. ROI Transform Microsoft. See, people are sharing cool things, and I don't know. I'm opening up the site first. I want to see what this is. Give me a moment. That's a pretty cool thing. So thanks for sharing that resource. So calculate your ROI. So company name, industry, I don't know, and then it'll give you some detail. I've never used this, by the way. So I've got my own ROI calculator that I've kind of like a semi little funny thing that I've built. And that works great for me, but I'd love to go and check this out, by the way. So I'm definitely going to try that out. So thanks for that resource that you've shared. Now that Microsoft 365 learning pathways, I actually bring these products into the environments where I work, and I'll kind of demo that at the end in the next couple of minutes. So I'm going to just stay in the slides for a moment. So that's definitely a great resource for me as well, is to bring the governance and the tools into the places where we work. So the Microsoft 365 learning pathways is such an incredible site to use. Okay. Now, if I look at the adoption resources and the adoption hub, as I started explaining, is that there is so much content on there that can be used. If I look at this adoption hub, and we did share it, yes. If I look at this adoption hub, it's actually broken up for each product, but they all follow the same approach. Okay, so if I go to Teams and I go to get started, it'll give me the list of things or the tools that I need. I mean, Microsoft has done an unbelievable amount of work to help people with these things, but some of these things are unbelievably cool. So like the Teams adoption guide is like a flip book, okay, that you can page through and that you can use. And I normally add them to Teams, by the way. So you can just page through this. It's got videos there. It's got text. It's got tips and tricks on it. It's just, man, it makes me unbelievably happy. And then there's another one that I use quite often as well, which is Teams Demo. I just want to see. So it's this Teams Basics. And I'm going to show you how I add this to Teams in a moment. So there's my Teams Basics, which means that people can click through. Some people are more comfortable with something that isn't so flashy, and maybe people that are old like me already, we still prefer to click through things. We don't like the flashy things so much. But you can pretty much read through and say, oh, let me see how this works, you know, and it's got these little demo play-by-play things. And I actually use them inside of my Teams. So here I am inside my Microsoft Teams, and you'll see that on one of the channels, I've added my Microsoft 365 learning pathway. So there's my learning pathways. So because it's slightly smaller, there we go, it wraps. But there's my learning pathways, and I can find all the resources to find training in there. There's the demo as well that I just showed you that I've added to the Teams. I'll just quickly, let me just go back. Let me just share this. Oh, look at someone was faster than me. Thank you, Tom. And then there's the adoption guide as well, which is also a pretty cool guide. So I love the Teams demo. It's such a cool thing. But if I go to my Teams, let me just find it. I've got so many pages open already. If I go to my Teams, I can then add that onto a team, and people can, inside of Microsoft Teams where they're working, and that's where adoption comes from. We have to bring tools to the people where they're working. We must stop expecting them to navigate to other places, okay? We really have to stop doing that. I just want to see... has anyone else still got their hands up? Is that just accidental maybe? I'm going to open up for some questions in a bit. But so that's adding the Teams book. But there's even the flip book that I've added to help users inside of Teams. So that's inside of a Microsoft team. I didn't even expect them to navigate away or to go do something somewhere else, okay? So that just helps me to add it to Teams and add it as links on websites. And a lot of times when the company is very new to Office 365, I sometimes even help users just set up a little shortcut on their desktop to a website that they can use. You know, people kind of learn at different paces. So sometimes it helps to just have a little shortcut on their desktop or a favorite in their browser or something until they start using Teams or something. Then very, very important for me is to not forget how important community is. Now, Twitter is my absolute learning platform. When it comes to technology, Twitter is the place that I learn. I get a lot of my students say to me, nah, it's old-fashioned, we don't use it. And believe me, I get a lot of my students to actually adopt it and to use it, because it's just the fastest way to learn what's the latest thing that's been published or something. You can follow the various Twitter handles. You can even write little lists to follow the hashtags for these specific Twitter handles. So that's something that's very, very important for me. And then the next 2 slides, if you wanted to take a screenshot right now, these are the blogs that I'm definitely suggesting. I just want to go read Tom. So in my experience, creating a simple Teams app that simply shows a web page is really easy and doesn't require programming. Absolutely agree, Tom. IT could then push this to end users, and that gives more screen real estate for the end user compared to the channel tab. I hear what you're saying. There is an app builder Teams for MS in the Teams App Store. Absolutely, absolutely agree what you're saying. I think for people that just are getting started, they might not even be so comfortable with looking at the apps yet, but that's definitely a great idea, and especially the real estate. I do agree with you. The space inside of Teams, inside of a channel, is rather small, and that's also why I'm looking forward to the SharePoint app coming to Teams, where you can link to it from your SharePoint site then as well. So there's just some of those blogs I think that is very important for me. Then just, by the way, check this one out. That's close to home for you. I was very inspired to write this blog. I think when I was there 2 years ago, I can't remember when I was there, but the Viking laws for Office 365 user adoption, I got very, very inspired by that. So I met a lovely lady there that inspired me. So here's a couple of blogs that I think is important for you to know if you're getting started with this, or if you want some crazy reading matter. And then also here's another list. So there's my other 10. So if you wanted to grab a screenshot, that's the other 10. But I mean, there's loads that you could look at. Digital literacy, of course, is very, very important for me as well. Like, super important, okay? If users are not digitally literate, they're going to struggle to adopt technologies. And don't think that they are, because they're not. Challenge accepted. The Viking laws is amazing. And there is Karen, by the way, who inspired me to think about those amazing things. I didn't even realize you were on the call. How's it, Karen? So the digital literacy is very, very important for me when it comes to these things. I think that's very important. And don't assume that your company is digitally literate, okay? Then what I've done is I've included the list of resources. I know that the sound looks horrible on a screen, but I included it specifically so that it is available if the slide share is shared. Okay, so I'll just go back to that, but there's a lot of resources on the productivity score, how it works, the usage analytics, the adoption hub, the service adoption specialist course. I'll see now if I can quickly copy it for you and paste it into the comments as well. Then the adoption flipbook, the Teams demo, learning pathways, champion program, Microsoft Docs, of course, on a more technical level, SharePoint lookbook, change management tips, that's some of my blogs, real world scenarios. This is amazing, by the way. This real world scenarios, let me just open them up and see if it's going to load quickly. I want to just open this up. Let me see, where's it going to open up now? I just want to open that up. And then there's Teams virtual event guidance, Teams reflect. I don't know if anyone's seen that. And then bring governance into Teams. That's also pretty cool. So let me just open up this quickly. So just give me a moment. I've got to figure out where it opened it up though. Let me just think about that. There we go. Too many screens. So real world scenarios and best practices is a really, really cool resource as well. I'll share that here. Thank you, David, or David. I'm not sure if that's David or David. David is pronounced Afrikaans, by the way, because I'm Afrikaans. So that's the real world scenarios and best practices. It's got some incredible resources, like an unbelievable amount of resources. And then this reflecting Teams for emotional well-being is quite a nice thing that I've seen come out recently. It's a really, really cool focus that Microsoft is taking to help people support and help their people better. Okay, so let's quickly see. I just wanted to see if it will I want to just open up. I'll open up to my resource slide now in a moment. So just please remember how important community is. And this is an African word. It's one of our 11 official languages, believe it or not. And this is the Bantu language, and it says that I am who I am because of who we all are. Don't forget the power of community, okay? So that's super important to me. That brings me to the end of my slides, which absolutely opens up the floor for any questions you might have.